How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to 2A News Now. And I appreciate everybody that takes time to watch my videos. And if you guys could do me a large favor after you watch today's video, if you enjoyed the video, as well as you appreciate the information that I gave you, if you guys would do me a favor that would help the channel out and help it to continue to grow, I just ask you to take a few seconds of your time to like, share, and subscribe and hit those post notifications. I really would appreciate it. Donald Trump has been president for a month, and only in that short time period, him and his administration have accomplished a lot. And a lot of us have been wondering, who is Donald Trump going to pick to be the director of the ATF? A lot of people would like for it to be Brandon the AK Guy Herrera. Everybody knows he's a great YouTuber, and of course he's very pro Second Amendment. But some people might say, which is true, if he did get the job, he would have to learn as he goes along, which I'm pretty sure he could do. And I know a lot of people are leery if President Trump that picked somebody that had been in the ATF for a long period of time. But there's a new front runner for the position, and his name is Dan O'Kelly. Dan O'Kelly has spent more than 3 decades in some type of law enforcement. He spent 23 years in the ATF, and before that, he was a law enforcement officer. But the most important thing is, he's pro Second Amendment. And if he does get the job as director of the ATF, he's committed to reforming the agency to better serve both law enforcement and law-abiding citizens. He wants to restore public trust in the ATF, which will be a tall order, of course. He wants to enhance training for the agents, and he wants to refocus the efforts of the ATF towards violent crime and criminals instead of going after law-abiding citizens and the gun industry. And he does have support from the Second Amendment community as well as law enforcement. And this is what Dan O'Kelly had to say in a recent interview. I am not a politician. My heart is in completely what I believe, and I candidly believe. I am the guy to fix the ATF. I know what is wrong with it, how it got that way, and how to fix it. He wants to address the long-standing issue with inadequate training, as well as getting rid of political influence. He says the ATF agents have been undereducated and misled by headquarters, which all has led to inconsistent enforcement and, of course, a lack of public trust. Dan O'Kelly also went on to say the ATF is operated on a process where an anti-gun administration feeds their wishes to headquarters, which then trickles down to the tech branch. Agents are given misinformation and aren't trained well enough to know the difference. He said that's going to change. I mentioned earlier that Dan O'Kelly would implement new training, what he calls comprehensive training, and that he would make sure they have the knowledge and the tools to enforce gun laws accurately and fairly. And here's something else that he's come up with that I think is fantastic. He wants to make training resources available to the public as well as to the gun industry. And in turn, he hopes that promotes transparency and also hopefully reducing unintentional violations of gun laws. And Dan O'Kelly said the ATF should prioritize going after people who commit violent crimes, to name a few: armed drug dealers, carjackers, active shooters, rather than targeting law-abiding citizens and law-abiding businesses. And also, besides the new training programs for law enforcement, he also wants to make sure there's training programs for school teachers that can respond to active shooter situations. And I've said numerous times, and a lot of people have as well, that gun control doesn't work. And also, we really don't need any new gun laws, because Dan O'Kelly said every bad thing someone can do with a gun is already illegal. The ATF needs to focus on enforcing those laws against violent criminals, not persecuting law-abiding citizens and businesses. And now, one of the things that Dan O'Kelly is known for after leaving the ATF, besides owning his own business, but he has been brought in to testify in numerous cases as an expert witness in firearms, and he's got a very good track record of people winning their cases. And in some cases, when the prosecution finds out that Dan O'Kelly is being brought in as an expert witness in the case, they actually will drop charges. That's how good he is, especially when it comes to ATF overreach. One particular case involved a former combat Marine, and he was selling 80% lower receivers for AR-15s. And in the ATF's infinite wisdom, they claimed that the 80% unfinished lowers were actually firearms. But when Dan O'Kelly testified in that case, he proved the ATF was wrong. In part, he said, even if you finish an 80% lower, it only satisfies 50% of the legal definition of a firearm frame or receiver. The ATF had been wrong, and I made it clear in court, he said. Dan O'Kelly also said, I spent years holding the ATF accountable when they act outside their authority. If I'm confirmed as director, I will ensure the agency operates within the law and respect the rights of law-abiding citizens. He's a life member of the NRA and a huge supporter of other Second Amendment organizations. He said he's the most pro-gun SOB that ever worked at the ATF. He's been pro-gun all of his life, and he believes in the rights of law-abiding citizens to own and use firearms responsibly. He said the ATF should be an ally to the good guys and a formidable opponent to the bad guys. Over the years, I've done a couple of stories about Dan O'Kelly, and even though a lot of us would like to see Brandon Herrera as the director of ATF, but I truly believe that Dan O'Kelly is the right man for the job to become the next director of the ATF. Like I mentioned earlier, he's a former law enforcement officer, was in the ATF for over 20 years, and now he spends a lot of his time being an expert witness against the ATF, and he helps win a lot of these cases. And I know people are fearful for an insider, but this man is truly pro-Second Amendment. And I just gave you a little bit of information here. You can Google him and find a lot of stuff that he has done to help people beat the ATF in court. The only thing he didn't say, and I wish he would have said, is that he would weed out and fire the corrupt and bad ATF agents. So I'd really like to know in the comment section, after the information that I gave you, do you still think Brandon Herrera should become the next director of the ATF? Or do you think Dan O'Kelly should become the next director of the ATF? Or is there anybody else that you think that should be? And as always, I appreciate everybody that supports the channel. After each video that I make, you guys are always crushing it by liking, sharing, and subscribing, and hitting those post notifications. And I'm so very grateful that you do so. And I invite all of you to come back and watch my next video.